I'm going to do a very quick introduction and without any break, transition to, a description of what I don't know if W doing any or much modular, but Paul, you're one of the leaders in Chicago, if not the leader, with Josh in bringing modular to scale at Kinexx for the last 3 years or so, and I also want to hear a little bit about what you were doing previously at Ellipsis. Your background is in architecture. We have mostly on the call students who are studying civil engineering. Construction management by Lindsay, thank you. And some have architectural or industrial design background, but the greater majority have previous academic credentials and work experience in either structural or civil. Your MArch was from GSE back in 2005. This is all from LinkedIn, so it has to be true. But are there any aspects of your, a plea to continue on your LinkedIn so far in terms of what motivates people? And your web's phenomenal, and I hope that students have had a chance to take a look, what Kinexx is doing, and we're really happy that you're how busy you are, and
Yeah, well, first, can everybody hear me okay?
Perfect.
Okay. Yeah, well, yeah, thank you so much for having me. I was really honored to be asked. It's been a little bit of a crazy week for us. We have this kind of staccato schedule where we're in our fabrication facility and office, and then all of a sudden we have these bursts of energy where we're sending homes out to the job sites, and it's everybody. It's kind of 2 parts fear and 3 parts excitement, and it's all crazy and madness and a lot of activity. So that was this week, and so I'm really happy this happened on Thursday instead of Wednesday, because it would have been a little bit of a mess yesterday. So the timing worked out, and I'm really honored to be asked to be here to talk to all of you talented people. And just to give you a little quick background, I think the LinkedIn summary did a pretty good job, I'll say. The one missing link is that I grew up outside of Detroit. And the reason that's significant is that we moved there. My father was in the auto industry, and so I kind of came up in the world of manufacturing. So even before I knew that I wanted to be an architect, I think I was really fascinated with the whole act of making. There's something really fascinating to me about going to these really gritty environments, automotive, and this was before, massive automation and robots, and this was, a lot of people with a lot of grease on their hands doing very specialized work. But I remember even then thinking how amazing it was that you could take something as complex as a car or a truck and dissect it down into its requisite parts in such a meaningful way that every person at every step of the process became really integral. They became a specialist at that one thing. But they also weren't required to be, masters of the whole thing, the whole kind of the whole process. And so what I've somehow come full circle to through all those other steps that you mentioned, as far as schooling and professional practice, is this idea that design can play a larger role. It's not just designing the physical output, but it's designing the process by which you get there. And that applies for all across all disciplines of design and engineering. This sort of widening of the understanding of the role of what architects and engineers can the roles that we can play throughout that process all the way through implementation. So yeah, that's you asked a bit about. So I just to give another quick recap, I came to Chicago after the GSD. I was really excited to get to the Midwest. I think Chicago is sort of insulated city in some ways from just that things take a bit longer to get to Chicago. I feel like there's a bit of a lag, but there's also this really rich kind of design culture that I was really excited to jump into. Growing up in Michigan, and I'm a Midwest guy. I really enjoyed my time in the Northeast, but I was also really excited to kind of get back and see what I could do in Chicago. And so I joined a company called Crick & Sexton, who was, fortunately for me, they were at this really interesting pivot point in their development of their practice. They were doing really high-end residential projects, beautiful projects, but they were taking their first leap into these very large multifunctional buildings. They've gone on to do a lot of really large government work now, and they're a great practice, but they were in this moment of transition, and so I got thrown into the kind of CA role, CD and CA role of a project called the Spurtis Institute, which was, it far exceeded my experience, and it far exceeded my, I was put in a role that I probably didn't deserve to be in, but I, did my best to learn on the fly, and so the learning curve was really steep, and enabled me to, a few years later, launch my architecture practice, Ellipsis. We did a lot of, kind of smaller scales, right? We started that at the launch of the kind of the height of the economic recession, which was a really, silly time to start a practice, but we went for it and managed to survive. And then that kind of gave way to a lot of great relationships that yielded what I'm doing now, which is Kinexx.
And Kinexx entered the market at an interesting time, right? Before the start of the pandemic. Housing in Chicago, like wide, is for market. If I could get into maybe the techniques of it a little bit more, what were the economic considerations led you to think, and Josh to think, that this was the right time, to aggressively modular in the Chicago market? And we were supposed to go right at, and Columbia went for trouble with the pandemic, reaching advisable. One of the people we were going to talk to was Mark Skender, and I don't really know him. I didn't get him, but we went up and back a few times, and changes in Skender construction, but he sort of pulled back from modular, either because of the pandemic when that happened, or for other reasons that were internal, and I'll never know. But why now? Why then?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would like to say that there was a lot of, intensive business strategy and intelligent thought put into it. I think it was circumstantial, quite honestly. We were really interested. We started the R&D process and really kind of kicking it around schematically in 2016. And so it just so happened that in like January, February of 2020, right before everything shut down, we had been nurturing a relationship with a not-for-profit developer who had built about 100 or so homes in a neighborhood called Pilsen in Chicago in the 90s, and they were gearing up. They were kind of generating a lot of force with amongst their own organization and with their affiliate organizations in different neighborhoods. They were trying to kind of create a conglomerate of smaller organizations to go after to kind of make a more meaningful dent in the affordable housing market. And so they were really interested in kind of getting in with us and on the early level, not just as a client, but as a kind of a partner organization. And they became really integral. I mean, quite honestly, they took a flyer on us. We were an architect, and my partner's a general contractor and real estate professional. We had no experience in modular other than just spending 3 years kind of really working the problem, and nurturing relationships with city officials and really kind of pounding the pavement. But we never built anything, and so they put forth the money for us to build our first full-scale prototype, which they were going to use as a model and then ultimately sell. And they since have, but they didn't have to do that, and they're called the Resurrection Project, just for reference. And they really they championed the launch of our company, really. And then our next 2 homes were another with them, and then another with their kind of a sister organization, Lawndale Christian Development Corporation, in another neighborhood. And they are 2 organizations leading the charge on the south and west sides of Chicago. They want to build up to 2,000 homes, 1,000 south and 1,000 west. And so I guess, why now? There are a lot of political forces, a lot of social forces, I think, driving, pointing towards affordable housing, and there always have been. But I think the call for action, I think, has amplified significantly, and had at the moment we started quite substantially. And I think the pandemic in some ways actually accelerated our kind of launch and growth, because it just so happened that people all of a sudden the move towards really dense living situations, which I can appreciate and endorse as an architect, obviously, and as a planner, people really started seeking out, single family home options, and that paired with neighborhoods that were very much in need of kind of filling the voids, filling the kind of missing teeth on the lot, or on the block, for reasons of security, for reasons of trying to build people in communities up with home ownership opportunities. um, I know I'm kind of going in circles, but there were a lot of forces that kind of congealed to, I think, kick us off, and have been really the backbone of the demand that has allowed us to move forward so confidently.
Yeah, and you mentioned government policy, perhaps changes, different administrations, but also a concentration on the southwest sides. And none of us are from Chicago or the Midwest. I have been to Chicago half a dozen times, and maybe some of the students have been there as visitors.
Yeah.
But our read from a distance is that the south and southwest sides have been historically disadvantaged, economically
Correct.
deprived of resources, and that may have changed, not just in the Lightfoot administration currently, but a little bit more previously since Delhi. What type of government incentives have been available to support startups and initiatives, particularly in affordable housing, and particularly for modular for affordable housing? I mean, is there much government support or not?
Yeah, it's really, it's sort of convoluted, but there are federal subsidies available, and the reason it's important for us to partner with not-for-profit developers is they are kind of tooled up to weed through the massive quantity of administrative kind of red tape that enables, that allows that money to flow to them. So federal subsidies, there are, the city of Chicago is there's some state of Illinois, but the city of Chicago has really played a leading role as well in allocating city budget money towards portions of projects. They've identified a lot of pilot zones for big multifamily affordable projects. They have the biggest landowner in the city of Chicago is the city of Chicago, and so all the empty lots they've acquired through various means over the years, and so they have this great ability to hand over, like one of our partners, Lawndale Christian, as a leader of something called Reclaiming Communities. The city kind of gifted them 250 lots. So that's there's money that is then paid towards the site work, like for our projects with them, the site work. So the city will cover that portion of the work, and there's a lot of politics that drive kind of why they stop there, but there's a lot of ways that they kind of intervene and subsidize. And so the not-for-profits we work with, we try to give them the most competitive price that we can while still kind of keeping the lights on. They add a bit of their overhead to cover their costs only, and then they've kind of these great programs to kind of their first-time home buyer coaching programs where they will bring people, educate people into the home buying process, connect them with financing, but then also connect them with subsidies that then bring that final number to them all the way back down.
Is there a connection to the properties that the Housing Authority has made available? I remember reading, not recently, but not that long ago, about some of the demolition of projects that were seen as being, I can't think of the polite word, obsolete.
Yeah. So the direct answer is not yet for us, but I think there's an awful lot of talk. Like we have like monthly conversations with the Cook County. Chicago is in Cook County in Illinois, so the Cook County Housing Authority, Cook County Land Bank. The land is not really the problem. Strangely, I think it's that where there's a will, there's a way, and I think the biggest the acquisition of land towards these projects is quite easy based on the scale of what we're doing. We're kind of doing scattered site infill of single family and some small multifamily. The real trick that we found, which was very unexpected, and I don't want to go off on a tangent from your question, but was financing. banks, it's very easy for banks to collateralize stick-built construction, because if somebody defaults, there's half a building there, or that can be finished by somebody else, and so there's value to the asset that they can absorb in that default situation. With ours, there's not, because it's not, it's built up to about 80% in a factory, and then it's not on the job site until it's all the way. A lot of that that financial outlay has already occurred. And so that's one of the struggles that we encountered that we weren't prepared to encounter. And luckily, we have a lot of people that are much smarter than us in the finance world that have helped to bring on lenders and familiarize them and kind of create that comfort level and familiarity. But we had some early on clients that were interested that ended up, not being able to move forward because of that very reason, because banks couldn't figure out how to make it work and how to deal with their own risk allocation fears. So, yeah.
Yeah. So, Paul, I'm glad to have a conversation, and I wish we were doing it in person, maybe over a beer or something, St. Patrick's Day. But I don't know if you want to present any slides.
Sure. Yeah.
And then the students are really here to ask questions, not just
no problem.
Listen, witness our conversation, but
no, of course.
This is a good introduction. And
yeah, sure. Let me give a quick. I'll try to keep it brief. I'm as I'm sure you are all very well aware. I'm an architect, so I tend to be a talker. So I'll try my best to exercise restraint here. So I will take this over and oops, apologize. I had it teed up here, and it went away. Okay. So I just wanted to give a quick overview, and it's not, this is just to give a kind of look into what we do. We are, like I said, we are very small scale. We're trying to fit a very niche market, and so we do single family is our kind of bread and butter, and small multifamily is our is kind of in our kind of list of offerings right now. I think when we started, we every single opportunity interested us, and so we had like 9 different products that we were developing, and somebody that was a bit wiser than we were said, listen, you have to narrow your pursuit initially, figure out a couple of good products, develop them, and then really spend the time honing the process, because the process is where everything is made or broken. And so we listened, and so we now have single families, a couple versions that we have, micro variations, different bathroom configurations or quantities. We have a 3-flat that is both products are easily adjusted to be ADA compliant. And so these are some early renderings of kind of a streetscape of our products, but really we're made to kind of plug in, empty lots. With the exception of our current project, which has gotten a bit of press recently. Some of you may have seen this, and if you did any Googling of in advance of this is called Harrison Row. And so this is a developer, a market rate developer, who by the requirement of a affordable city ordinance we have here in Chicago called the ARO, in order to gain approval for their market rate development, they have to deliver a certain percentage of units off site that are affordable. And so they usually build those at a loss or a break even. And in this case, we're doing 28 units for them on it's kind of the one project we've done so far that is a bunch of contiguous lots. And so it's this is a kind of very not a very enticing rendering, but a rendering nonetheless of these kind of these kind of side by side. So we've installed 2 of these so far, and we have 12 more to go. I won't read all of these, and I know people roll their eyes when they look at these kind of more corporate kind of value propositions or value statements, but we really try to develop our whole corporate culture based on these values. And the one I want to point to the most, all of these are really important, is this last one, which is talk less, listen more. We're doing affordable housing, and so we have really tried to humble or kind of bury the ego and listen to stakeholders, community members, people that have lived in neighborhoods for a lot of years, to understand that every neighborhood has a very unique cadence and pace, rhythm, different demographics that have different cultural kind of norms. And so we really try to prompt people productively and ask a lot of questions, but it's our talking is more just to procure rich information out of people that live in the neighborhood. So community groups, and we're lucky to be connected with those people through our not-for-profit developers who have these really kind of loyal constituencies. So I'm just for the designers and engineers in the room, just to understand kind of what we dial in, kind of what the scale of our projects look like. There's three kind of base kind of seed products. One, forgive us for these really the lack of creativity in our naming. We haven't really focused on that, but we have what's called the Essential, we have the Starter Home, and we have the 3 flat. So the Essential is like as tight of a configuration as we can offer to meet price points of the people that need to be like lower than what we thought was low with our base product, which is the Starter here in the middle. So the Starter is a 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath, 2-story building. It's a single family home. And then the Essential is a slightly scaled down version of that, but it goes from 3-bedroom to 2-bedroom. Chicago lots allow for 19 feet of width. The standard Chicago lot is 25 feet. So with setbacks and without any kind of major fire ratings, additional fire ratings, we can go up to 19 feet. So that's what we're set up to do. And then each of these products are available in a 1.5 bath, a 2 bath, and a 2.5 bath option. The 3 flat is either a 3-unit or, sorry, it's always a 3-unit. It's a 3-bedroom or a 2-bedroom, depending on the mix that developers are looking for. And both of those versions have 2 baths, and the ground floor is ADA compliant. We're not, Chicago is very similar to New York in a lot of ways, where the kind of walk up first level with the garden level is kind of a prevalent building type here. And so we're a little different than that. We're only about 18 inches off. The ground floor is only about 18 inches up from the grade line, which enables us to easily convert, at least for accessible entry. And then our floor plans, we spent a lot of time trying to working those to allow for ADA adjustability. So this is the Essential. It's very, very tiny, but it's a single family home. The people own the dirt. They have a yard. They have all the things that most people have been priced out of in Chicago, and I imagine New York as well. This is the kind of smallest seed project that we have. So we have living space, kind of mechanicals and pantry, half bath, and then a small accessible kitchen, and then a primary bedroom here, a secondary bedroom, and then a shared bath with stacked laundry on the second. The starter home is one module larger. So our modules are either 8 feet or 10 feet wide. And so you get a 3rd bedroom on the 2nd floor, and in this case, you get you expand this back area to get sort of dining or kind of multi-purpose space behind the kitchen. And then these are a variety of configurations of both. So both of those options are available in this sort of back-to-back duplex. A lot of full block lots are deep enough to allow for a front-facing and a back-facing unit. So this is more of like a townhome configuration, like I showed in the Harrison Row project that I mentioned, the larger development that's currently underway. These are 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath options. Of course, the bathrooms are convertible to 2 or 2.5 in these as well. So we have the back-to-back, we have a side-to-side kind of townhome configuration, and then we have there is also it's not very marketable, but technically we have a quad version. It's a 4-unit, 2-story building that has the side-to-side kind of mirrored, and there's a back-to-back as well. And then this is our 3 flat. I'm happy to send these out, by the way, Rick. I know I'm going through fast, but people are interested. I'm happy to send this document out. The 3 flat is kind of, there's a small entry here. I'm showing a non-accessible version, but we have kind of kitchen and kind of living space in the front. We have a 2-bedroom there's an ensuite bathroom, and then a hall bath, laundry and mechanical closet. Both bedrooms get a big walk-in closet. And then you have, this is the 3rd floor. This shows the 3-bedroom configurations. All is the same except laundry moves, and then there's a couple of smaller bedrooms that make the 2nd and 3rd for kind of more larger family situations. As much as everybody loves to see floor plans, I'm sure this is what's really fun, and this is where we really enjoy, especially coming from the background of design. There's the thing that I've always really loved about being an architect is it's one of the few professions, and engineering as well, the few professions that you can kind of have a thought abstractly in your mind, and then a day or two later you walk onto the job site and it's like it's manifested itself physically. You can touch it, you can look at it, and it's this really kind of fascinating thing that I think we often overlook or we get kind of desensitized to. But with our situation, like this is our fabrication facility. It's an old steel production plant. It's it happens within minutes. Sometimes we send a drawing and we walk out 30 minutes later or after lunch and it's already built. And so there's a lot of satisfaction to that. You can solve problems in real time, but not only are you solving the problem once, you're solving a problem, and then that solution carries through to multiple iterations as you go, as you move forward into multiple versions of that same product. So there's a lot of satisfaction with kind of honing all of those. What starts as 100 problems goes down to 40, it goes down to 10, goes down to 3. And then you of course change the project, or change the design, and then it all starts over. This is just an image I wanted to show. This is we're prepping for delivery of the unit that we delivered, and just this was on Tuesday. And so it's not a high-tech situation. We're able to pull our modules with I think, can somebody mute? I'm sorry, I'm having trouble hearing. I'm not sure who that is. Sorry about that. Sorry. No, I apologize. I was having trouble. There was a reverberation. So anyway, so when we started, we were pulling with tractor trailers. We've had custom trailers now designed for us that let us get under viaducts a lot easier. It gives us more access to more parts of the city. And so we have a transport company that, is really ingenious in kind of creating these custom modes of transportation for us. But, what they excel in from an engineering standpoint, they lack in kind of sophistication with their vehicles, with their old truck here. So this is just to say, the process there is a ton of thought and creativity, engineering, design, thoughtfulness that goes into it. But it's still very nuts and bolts and gritty. It's not, we don't have, robots welding everything for us, and we have people doing real work that gets quicker and faster and more efficient as we go, but it's still very manual and kind of analog in a lot of ways. So this is just from the other day. This is the first module going in for the second site here. This is that Harrison Row project I was mentioning. We delivered this about a week and a half ago, and we split this. This is a 2-unit building that we split up into 2 days of delivery, 1 unit per day in consecutive days. So we show up. The first module leaves our shop at about 7 a.m. and we're usually finished by about 1 p.m. or 2 p.m. That's 10 modules. And then some kind of finagling with our kind of roof system. We have our second floor modules that ship flat, and then we have this. If you can kind of see in this side of this image, there's this wall that is hinged down that flips up 180 degrees as the crane lifts this plane right here, and then it becomes the support for this roof plane that is now flat, but then gets tilted into its pitch and then locked into place before it gets hoisted. So these days are when everybody, that's affiliated with the projects, ourselves included, the owners, the neighborhood people. It's a big spectacle, and people turn into a bunch of little kids because you see these big Lego blocks flying through the air, and it's hard not to get excited about it. Even us who have done it quite a few times. These are 2 of the joint venture developers who are working on the project, but I think they spent about 16 hours sitting on the site just watching it and laughing. So these are the first 2, and then we get the second floor modules on, and then ultimately it's, this was sort of halfway through the day at about maybe 11 a.m. So we start to see the profile of the front, and then this gets built back. And so I think it's, these are fun to show people, but I think it's the intent is to point out this kind of, again, I said the widening of roles that architects and engineers can play. the criteria of a design project when you're designing a home is we would all approach it in a slightly different way, but at the root of it, there is space planning, there is material selection, there is user driven experience. There's all the things that we kind of hinge our design work on. But with this, there's all these other criteria. We have to understand it in real time as it's developed. We have to very much get into means and methods. We have to think about transport. We have to make sure that it can get under overpasses. It can make turns. It has to be strong enough structurally that it can be lifted up and kind of shaken and twisted and set back down and still maintain its integrity without all of the drywall cracking and the windows smashing and all that. So it's this really interesting. These are really interesting kind of rich layers of problem solving and design work that get piled onto what is already an interesting process. So these are the first two that will receive the final finishing on the interior. It's mostly finished when it's delivered, but it still requires about 20% of the overall work, and then the exterior gets the cladding, and then we're done. But when we deliver it, it's fully watertight, it's fully secure. So on-site theft that plagues construction sites in a lot of areas, all areas pretty much of the city, we are not immune from, but we are much better suited to protect against, because we leave the site at about 4 o'clock on delivery day, and the doors are locked, and the windows are intact. If it rains the second we leave, no water is infiltrating, and so we're kind of buttoned up and both from a weather standpoint and from a security standpoint. So it's it offers a pretty nice advantage. So just a quick bit of context, and then I'll stop. Each of these full structures is, each unit of each of these two unit structures is start to finish from the second the first stud gets put into place, from the moment that it's finished on site and the keys are handed over. Right now we're at 90 days. And so the value proposition that we like to stand behind is that we're not half as cheap as a stick-built home. But to developers who want a quicker turnover on their money, and they want to limit their carrying costs for all the financing, all the money that they're using to pay for these projects, that's where they see a ton of savings. And it's kind of an unburdening of their time administratively. They make front end decisions, they track the progress, but they're on to working on other deals that they're more interested in. And then we get what we want, which is to assist in building up communities and delivering a greater volume of affordable housing, which is really our key mission. So I'll stop there and open it up to questions. I'm happy to hear what anybody has to say.
That was a great presentation. Thank you so much, Paul. And the images show the ingenuity and the I'll call it the contextuality. I mean, the fitting infill is important in that regard. Mm-hmm. I'll start with the first question based on the presentation, but I'm really hoping that the students will raise their hands imminently and bring their own concerns and questions and curiosity to the table.
Sure.
You mentioned in particular a traditional Chicago housing typology called 3-flat. Which, mm-hmm. as you mentioned, is not all that different from, housing in many parts of New York. The other boroughs, the outer boroughs, sure. Where the extra unit often is as an income source is often the difference between someone being able to afford their own home and some not. And that's gotten a lot of attention of late because many of the row houses, brownstone or otherwise in New York, have that extra unit in a basement, and some of those were flooded and with loss of life. That's not the problem here. We haven't talked too much about underground utility connections and union issues attendant to that, but are these slab on grade or?
Yeah, they're technically if you were to look at them, they look like slab on grade. We actually sit on perimeter foundations. Our structure actually spans the long way, left to right of each module. And so it enables us to have a very simple foundation system along both edges. We do have a slab, but it's specifically and entirely for rodent control in the crawl space. And so it's a 2-inch mud slab that is literally just to stop, critters from getting in and ruining everything.
And part of the reason I ask is in terms of, I think you mentioned the percentage of 80% when you're talking about the financial aspect of recooing. But,
Yeah.
if 80% of the work is in the factory in controlled circumstances and the quality can be assured and the cost assured, the 20% that is site work is all union labor in Chicago, or not necessarily?
It's not, it hasn't been thus far. I think that is our kind of our kind of middle ground. It depends on where the money is coming from. And even though we are not directly tied to that money, the ability for the projects to be realized is tied to the government incentive money. And so anytime that's the case, there's a lot more, the stakeholders are a lot more beholden to using union labor. And it's not that we have no issue with I've had a lot of really great relationship with union contractors over the years, but for affordable housing, it's just a math problem. I mean, we pay our staff really well, but there's this contradiction, because the same people that are telling us no, the cost needs to be lower, it needs to be lower, it needs to be lower, are also the people that that will then turn around and put that pressure, and it's this sort of impossible formula. But I think what we have agreed upon with some of these larger projects that do involve government funding is that we have this ability to bifurcate our process, and it's naturally bifurcated in the sense that we have all the work that happens in our shop. We're a non-union shop, but there's all this work that happens on site. There's the excavation, there's the concrete work, there's the underground utilities, and then there's the transport, delivery, and erection, and all of that can be a kind of a union package if need be. And so if there are MBE or WBE requirements, if there are union requirements, we're happy to participate in that. It's just a matter of, if the numbers work for the project. And
well, since you bring up the transport issue, and maybe I missed that part of the discussion. There were some images, of the truck. I didn't see cranes, but your factory is located pretty close to the infill sites in south and southwest sides, and Pilsen, other. So the transport issues, the logistical issues that we have in New York of modular units being fabricated in Pennsylvania, having to negotiate wide load requirements on highways. Are you relatively immune from that being localized in Chicago, or?
We're not immune. I think if we were designed differently, I don't think we would be immune at all. I think strangely, one of the very first design parameters we kind of tasked ourselves with was transport, which was a weird thing for an architect and a general contractor those discussions were very strange, but that was kind of brought on by the city of Chicago, the former building commissioner. We had this great meeting, and it was brief, but she said, it can be modular, but for now it can't look modular. And she also said, she didn't want a bunch of stacked boxes. She wanted it to be universally applicable and as fit its way as best as possible into as many neighborhood fabrics as possible. But then also it was like, it's got to be able to be delivered everywhere. We can't just have, because one neighborhood is isolated with a low viaduct, or a tight streetscape, they can't be excluded from this. And so we took that very literally. And so everything that we do is non-wide load delivery. So we went with the standard load, and originally we were doing tractor trailers. And so we were still, we think we have access to about 95% of the city. We haven't met a situation that has prevented a project to move forward yet, based on transport. I think there's certain localized site conditions that we evaluate the sites in advance, and we haven't had one that was a non-qualifier yet, but there'll be some, as far as utility locations and things like that make the craning impossible. I'm sure we'll encounter those, but we'll know those before we launch the project.
Was that Felicia Davis when she was there?
No, that was Judy Friedland.
Okay.
Was so she really served.
I did an AI panel at one point with Felicia. I see a couple of hands raised, and I'll try to go in the order. I think Terry, you were first, then Lynn, then Shatis, and I'm going to turn my microphone off.
Yes, thank you so much, Professor, and thank you, Mr. Paul, for your great presentations.
Sure.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Yeah. I want to ask quick questions regarding the model of your products. If a customer wants to more more design flexibility. Could you provide that service? And also, I've heard some of the utilizations of technologies such as BIM or DFMA, if you have heard that. I mean, like, do you use kind of that systems in your business?
We are it's funny, we're very analog now, almost willfully and intentionally, because we want to, when we started, we really wanted to force ourselves to draw every piece and every component, and really, you know, I'm a big believer that if you're forced to reconcile that stuff in a drawing or a model, you really know it, and you can solve you can get a lot accomplished before you're costing yourself a lot of money with mistakes in the field. That said, I think we are not very technologically sophisticated from a software standpoint. We're getting there, and we have a goal to get there by the end of this year. So we work in Revit, we work in some degree in AutoCAD for our shop work occasionally. But there, we also, to answer the first part of your question, we would love to be something for everybody, but I think the value that we're able to offer people is predicated on the idea that we're doing things in volume and we're doing things repetitively, so we can buy material all in the same sizes, and we can buy quantities that enable us to get a lower unit price. And we're also trying to be disciplined in not offering kind of a bunch of design changes to every client, because our goal is to figure out our process and optimize it as much as possible, because every dollar we can save in that process and every minute that we can shave off is a savings to the end user, and it makes it more and more affordable. And so we offer it's a kind of a bracketed range of options. But that said, every time somebody asks us, could you do this or could you do that, our first impulse is to say no, but then we are it always yields other conversations that manifest themselves in later projects.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Paul.
no problem.
Just a follow-up questions.
Yep.
Do you have some experience before you start this business? I mean, like, do you know a lot of like stuffs regarding the customers' requirements? And do you have why did you choose this business as your setups? Thank you.
Why did I choose this business? Is that what you said?
Yeah. What is the reason?
I think that I spent most of my career spending thousands of hours working on projects that were intellectually stimulating, and but ultimately they didn't help an awful lot of people. And so I think the older I've gotten, I've become a bigger believer that you only have so many hours on this earth, and so you can choose how you spend them. And so I kind of made a decision that I wanted to spend them doing something that was a lot more meaningful to a wider range of people. I mean, as I said, I think we had to kind of throw the ego aside with the design. We're proud of our design work, but it's not groundbreaking from an aesthetic standpoint, right? I mean, we're really gonna, we have goals to continue to push it, of course. But the bigger thing is the realization that, like, many children will, all their childhood memories will be made in these environments, and they wouldn't have otherwise had a chance to be in these environments without this process being put in place. And so that's really meaningful to us. So I think the choice was just kind of, hey, if your goal, which it is mine, is to leave the world better than I found it in some small way, then I think I'm going to have a much easier time doing it in a greater impact, doing things like this in volume for the affordable market than doing it, doing things that end up in architecture magazine. So
thank you so much. Thank you for sharing, Mr. Paul.
Sure.
I think Lynn, your hand was up next, and then Chitas afterwards.
Hi. Hi, Paul. Thank you for introducing the current products and the whole processes. And my question is similar to Darius. I just want to know if the dimensions of the module are customized, can you still produce those modules as quickly as like produce your current products?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think there's the limitations are we have a kind of this rail system that is set up to be 19 feet wide. And so anything that changes the width of the module changes our kind of whole setup. and it's not impossible. Like this current project that we're working on for the 28 units, it warranted, they wanted a skinnier footprint. And so we laid a third rail to allow us to change that width, because it was, the numbers worked out and it was still affordable for them. We have changed the other dimension, each module, as the kind of the shorter distance, played with it a bit. I think that we have more flexibility in that direction, but then it becomes, there's limitations with transport, right? We're trying really hard to maintain a design that is most accessible to the greatest quantity of sites in the city and beyond. And so the limitations in that dimension really are based on transport.
Yeah, thank you. I had another question. Like, in addition to single family houses, do you also use these products to build large apartment buildings? And in design process, what do you think would be extra challenges when developing other kinds of apartments or houses?
Yeah, it's a great question. We have not pursued that intentionally, and it's not because we're not interested. We're very interested. There's just such a need at the scale that we're working that we could produce 1,000 homes a year and scarcely make a dent in the demand in the city of Chicago anyway. But that would apply to most cities. And so I think we just kind of, the market kind of found us. And so we're trying our best to answer that call. The different challenges with multifamily, there's a lot more site logistics when you're doing a multi-story, 4 or 5 story, 100-unit building. I think there's a lot of there's still a large degree of on-site infrastructure. You have to sort of build a docking station and then dock your modules to it. Whereas our product is exclusively modular, so the site component is basically the foundation only. But that's all of that is workable and super interesting. I worked on projects, academically that was dealt with exactly that, and they're fascinating. And one day we may get there, but we're not trying to be something for everybody. I think there are a lot of companies doing that, and they're doing it quite well. Like Z Modular is a company that does that really well. Skender in Chicago, before they closed, they were going after that market and doing, making really interesting, producing really interesting work. So it's not a lack of interest, but we're really trying hard to exercise restraint in the problems that we're trying to solve. If you try to solve 10 problems, you end up solving only a few, and you don't solve them that well. If you try to solve one problem, and you aggressively pursue it as a singular goal, I think you have a much better chance of making a real impact. And so that's kind of the strategy that we're taking.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for the question. Yeah.
It's your turn. Your hand was up next.
So what is the typical cost of fabrication of these housing units? Just curious to know.
Yeah, it's a moving target. It's a good question. So our standard starter home, it's a 10 module, 1,730 square foot home. The base model, which is a 1.5 bath, we started it was somewhere in like the $250,000 to $260,000 range, and that's everything. That's all the engineering and architecture costs, the permitting fees, the site work. That's kind of hand over the keys to the client. And so that's hard and soft costs. That's when we started. And with material escalation, with all the kind of supply chain issues that have been plaguing the world, we're somewhere between 280, 275, 280, up to 315, 320, depending on the model. And so the lower end of that would be about 275, 280 right now. And then for our not-for-profit developers, they as I mentioned, they add on their overhead to take, let's say, 275 up to 300, but then their goal is to link their home buyers up with subsidies that brings the ultimate cost down to about 245, 250.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, no problem.
I have a couple more questions, Paul. It was really interesting to hear, snippets of business plan, both about multifamily housing beyond the three unit typology. But also that the demand is so great for the infill single family that you could work forever in that vein. My question, you started by saying that you're originally from Michigan, originally from Detroit area, and knowing Detroit a little bit, maybe a little bit better than Chicago, I'm kind of wondering about expansion. I mean, if it's not typological expansion, are you thinking about geographical expansion elsewhere in Illinois or Wisconsin or Michigan, or is that just not in the cards because of transport and demand?
No, I think it's not. It's definitely in the cards. It's again, we're still we're not infants anymore, but we still kind of look at ourselves as toddlers in the business, and so I think we're trying really hard to well, we'll never perfect it, but optimize our process as best as possible before we start to really pursue those expansion goals. I think transport is really not the issue, because I think once we have our process down, because it's not an incredibly high tech operation yet anyway, and so it's easily clonable, and so I think we would more take on the strategy of cloning our operation in those various cities. Like Milwaukee has a goal to build I think 10,000 affordable units in the next 5 to 10 years, 5 to 10 years, I believe. Detroit obviously has a huge, overwhelming need, and that's been, that's sort of one of my dreams personally and selfishly, is that I've always really wanted to be a part of the kind of regrowth of that city, because it's on its way, but it's got a long way to go, and I think this could play a really active role. But it's, again, we think it's irresponsible to start that cloning process of our facility operation too prematurely, because if we have inefficiencies, we don't want to clone those inefficiencies. We want to clone, a well-oiled machine, basically. So, the goal is there. We just, it would change. And obviously it would enable us to kind of slightly tweak our manufacturing platform in a way that speaks to the specifics of, local lot sizes or zoning criteria that are, more nuanced city to city.
It's a good answer. And as a follow-up, if I might, you said nice things about what Skender was trying to do a few years ago, partly through our friends at the Chicago Architecture Center. Was introduced to Tim Swanson at Inherent,
sure.
and we'll be talking to Tim and to Walker Thisted tomorrow.
Cool.
Is there like friendly competition? Are you in the same market, or are they doing something kind of different?
As I understand, they're a little more kind of. I think they're taking, and I understand why. I think they're taking a bit of a I guess a similar approach that we took when we started. We didn't want a lot of fanfare or marketing. We didn't want a lot of press. We wanted to kind of exist under the radar for as long as we could. Because the more attention you get, the more expectations and the more kind of voices you hear, and we wanted to really listen to the right people, which were the community members, not the politicians and the other stakeholders that sometimes steer things. They have different agendas, and so I think there's some overlap with what Tim is doing, and admittedly I don't know fully. I'd be interested to kind of hear the kind of where they're at. But even with him, with any, there will be more in Chicago specifically. We're sure of it, and we hope so. And with Skender also, they were the big kind of shooters when we started, and there was a ton of marketing, a ton of energy surrounding the development of their manufacturing platform. And we were excited by it too. We met Tim, we toured their facility before we actually launched. It was really exciting, and their product was beautiful. And so we were as upset as anyone when they shut down, because like I said, there's a need for 150,000 affordable units in Chicago. So no one company is gonna eat up all of that supply. And so if the primary goal, in addition to just running a business and being successful, is to deliver as much affordable housing to the city and help take as big of a chunk of that, address as big of a chunk of that problem as we can, then we need more people. I mean, we could amplify our production capacity by a measure of 10 or 20, and still there'd be 80 to 90% of the market still available. So,
well, I really want to thank you for a great presentation in all regards. Again, apologize that we're not there. I wish we were there and
Oh.
and see the manufacturing process and this. And
Yeah, well,
projects
life
on
life will one day return to
Yeah.
normal. But if any of you independently of the school or as part of the school ever find yourself in Chicago, please reach out. We have these deliveries happening all the time. It's really it's a fun thing to see the facility, and we are
Yeah.
the doors are open, and you're all welcome. So
Well,
when life does actually officially, whatever normal means
Yeah.
now, when it gets back there, you're all welcome.
Well, I am planning on coming to Chicago for the AI convention in June, so maybe I'll take you up on that.
Yeah, no, please reach out. We'd love to show you around for
All right.
sure, Rick. Thank you.
Great. Okay.
Thank you for inviting me. We really appreciate all the great questions, and appreciate the opportunity to speak with all of you. Wish you all the best of luck.
Thanks again. Take care, Paul.
Okay, thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye. You too. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.